source, I mean disinterested source. Let's say, another thing could be, should GM foods be allowed in India or not? You are in the process of forming a policy. Where is the debate? Who's talking? On what basis are they talking? This is a scientific subject. Your and my opinions really may not hold much standing there. So issues like this then get resolved. Now, the public advocacy professional then has to be a trusted person. He cannot be somebody who's giving you dirty advice. Point is, where is this knowledge residing today in the country? Where the people who are going to frame a policy, they're going to get their inputs from. Are our MPs open to receiving advice, inputs, even information from people? Are the policy makers willing to look at best practices? And who's going to feed them the best practices? So this is how the public advocacy space has emerged over the last 7-10 years, and that's how the role of the public advocacy professional has dramatically evolved in these years. Here's my starting comments.
I just want to add a few comments. Tabre has introduced BSA as an industry association that represents international software publishers. One caveat to that is the large scale of investments that they bring into the market and the interest that they have in this market flourishing as a wave. So while I agree with some of my colleagues' comments in the fact that yes, policy formation and the policy dialogue has certainly evolved, and there's some departments that are definitely better at it, I would say, than others. The very start of public policy or the very start of creating a policy has always been to control an industry rather than allow it to grow and flourish. I think when we look at public policy, we look at it we need to look at it from an advantage India perspective, and it's not always from a very short or medium term perspective. We need to look at what is the long term gain for this market from that perspective. And then in that story, how do we bring all the stakeholders in play, whether it be an international company or be a domestic company. Let me give you a very specific example to the IT industry. And my colleague here, Rene, and I will probably talk about emerging technologies. Today, you look at the cloud computing space, you look at the cybersecurity space. There is great fear. There is the need for the government to control that space, and they are out there forming policies in this space. But the critical player in this space, which is the companies that are creating this technology, are often left out of the dialogue. Now, unfortunately, they happen to be also MNC companies, and the security perspective keeps coming in. And therefore, what my colleague says to the right is very, very important. How do we create an honest, trustworthy, and an open and frank dialogue? Because technology is today determining how policy is going to be framed. Today, yes, you may have a land acquisition policy that may happen in one framework, which is a traditional economy. But how do you deal with the economies of the future? How do you create the Make in India or the digital economy strategy? I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much. I come from a background which has nothing much to do with, so we have just started with just a 4-year-old venture, but it seems as if it has changed a lot in this country. The way people used to think about traveling or commuting in a city, we have changed. So before coming to that, I just have a small thought about the policy makers and the policy. So our interface is the policy executionists, who are the civil servants and the government officials who are at the forefront, who are executing the policy. And I have a simple 2-liner for them, which defines them very well, because I am a journalist and I see things from a different perspective altogether. What they believe is, अपनी मर्जी से कहाँ, अपने सफर के हम हैं, रुख हवाओं का है, उधर के हम हैं. Government officials, generally those who are executing the policy, has nothing much to say in the existing framework of policy that they are implementing. I'll give you a simple example. In Karnataka, there is a traditional, you can say, radio taxi scheme, which was drafted in 1998, way back. And all the taxis which are, so I belong to a taxi domain, but interestingly, we don't own a single taxi. So we are not a taxi company, but we are a software company. So there is a perception issue that also we are facing currently with the policymakers. So I was talking about the scheme which was which was drafted in 1998, and till we came in picture, everything was fair, sound, everything was going fine. And one fine day, everywhere the cabs which are using our sticker and our software were present on the road. And suddenly all those who were plying on the roads of Karnataka from last 10, 15 years found that, oh my God, I mean, there is something that have changed. All of a sudden, all my customers are gone. There is no one who would like to sit with us. And why that have happened? Because the cabs which are using our software can manage to ply at a rate which is just 50% of their normal traditional taxi in the city. And they've raised a challenge to us. They are saying, how is it possible? Look, you can't ply below the rates. We went to the policy executionists, that means the transport authorities and all, and they said they were clueless. Yeah, we can penalize you for charging more, but how can we penalize you for charging less? I mean, they have no answer to that. Similar kind of challenges everywhere in the country. So, we'll discuss during the discussion that, what challenges a policy maker and a policy executionist faces with the people like us who are, basically termed by media as the disruptors of the economy. We are actually, I don't use the term disruption, but I use the term collaboration. So, and we are streamlining the system. We are simplifying the system. I'm as simple as, uh, the resources were there in the economy from 1970. There were these caps were applying in the country, but nobody have ever thought that if we channelize this resource in a proper way, everybody's need can be solved, right? Uh, when the radio taxi schemes or radio taxi policies were framed, nobody ever thought, or nobody have even given a thought that these could be a replacement to your personal car. So nobody need to buy a personal car but can use a taxi. Is it possible? So nobody have even given a thought to that. And the policies are framed. So now the scenario has changed a lot. Now the policymakers are struggling with the whole new concept that how to control these low fare people. Earlier they used to control the high charging people. Now we are the low charging people, and now they are struggling that how to manage them, control them, because the establishment is challenged. What Jeshunari sir was saying, we have challenged the establishment, and let's see how far we have to go. We'll take it more during our discussion. Sure.
Thank you very much. A lot of thought-provoking articulation has come, which is the process issue, the understanding issue, the new emerging challenges coming from technology and things like that, the origin issue, the company, where company belongs from. So my next question is, many times I have seen that there is adversarial position emerged between government and business, uh, between government and other stakeholder, whoever that could be. What is the solution for that? So the articulation I will be looking from all of you will be, what is the solution? Because at the end of the session, organizer will compile a report which will go to a large number of legislators, government bureaucrats and lawyers and judges. So what is the solution this session is proposing? So that's my question. Anyone can take.
I'll take that.
Use this.
I was in fact hoping to touch on this. See, policy making in India has historically been based on the premise that industrialists are cheats, and government is the controller, the word that you use. We want to control economy. The NGOs always thought businessmen are cheats. The businesses always thought NGOs are rascals. They're trying to make money, delay projects and stuff. There was mutual distrust all around. There was no possibility of a sensible or a clean, open dialogue among these stakeholders. I have been in this space long enough to see that there is a change happening. There is a shift. Today, large corporations, I'm talking of large corporations and large NGOs, international NGOs, are able to sit across a table and reach a common ground on certain, shall I say, inconvenient issues. Um, Regulators are a new animal in the whole thing. 7, 10 years back, there were no regulators. Now, a regulator today is a different from a government. Regulators today are also understanding that businesses need to function. They need some kind of enabling environment to grow. A typical case would be if you were to look at your antitrust or competition commission and see how in certain cases they've come very hard on businesses, but in certain cases they've ruled amazingly business friendly decisions have come through. So the the monkey in the whole pack still is the federal structure in the country. What you are seeing is a shift of mindset in the central government. You travel into the states and you still see that there is that old mindset still existing. It's not all hunky-dory at states. They still look at businesses as cheats. You have any proposal on anything, they will look at what is your interest. Two competitors were to join in on a let's say supply issue or a product and approach the government, they will see is there cartelization. Their first thought is not that you are probably doing something benign. NGOs, the smaller ones, uh, especially those which have political people backing them, are still problem creators. They don't understand or appreciate the business issues. Their thinkings are not tuned to it. But if you were to deal with international or large NGOs, you will see that they understand business needs to be done, but can we do it responsibly? That is the bottom line with them.
So anybody else want to take it? But I want to add one more complexity. The origin of company, many times there is a deep distrust against multinational companies. Though they are registered as per Indian law, they serve Indian customer with the best technology product they have. They are more compliant sometimes, though it's a controversial statement, but very compliant. So I'm adding more complexity here.
Yes, Tabriz, I'd just like to briefly add here. I think what you just mentioned. So there is actually a very thin line between profit and profiteering, and that is where ears and eyes of a lot of regulators and government agencies stand up. So, and that definition is blurred across the world. It's not just in India, it's across the world. There are things that are interpreted either ways. But what is actually good about the Indian system is that a free judiciary provides that opportunity to dispute, contest, and stand for the right thing. What we probably need to do is, just as was discussed previously, is that we need to keep moving forward. So even today, a lot of uh, communication that we get from the government, from the regulators, they quote case laws which were which came out in 1980, 1975, related to profit and profiteering, and things have progressed far beyond that. But somewhere down the line, we are not adapting ourselves in the reformed system. And that's where I think we need to move forward to have new case laws, contest the things which we feel are not right, so that they come out to the judiciary, new case laws get formed because of the contest and so on. And I think that's an iterative process which will take time, but somewhere we need to raise questions as to whether what we are doing is right, whether if you're quoting a case law which is from 1980, whether that's the right thing to do or not. Can we move forward and have something better in our hand as a tool?
Um, my experience has been that in certain areas of public policy, there is a lot more emotive build-up, around a subject, and often, you would see that it's not necessarily that the arguments put forward by various interest groups are logical. So you have to give a space for that as well in the public policy making. Now, having said that, I find that often even government departments would put up, would welcome, actually, we should put up is a wrong word, welcome the kind of din that is created by certain NGOs to further a public policy goal that the government wants to follow. While that's legitimate because that's like part of the stakeholder mapping, I go back to what Yolin said about the actual player who is contributing. There is an aspect of who is creating that value and who is it being used. Ultimately, the government represents the consumer. So there has to be a balance, and that balance must be based on facts, on law, international commitments, and that is often lost sight of. I mean, just I think last week, I saw this huge din being created by visiting professors of law and different companies under some, innovation, IP Owners Association. The din created was that they shouldn't be meeting anybody in government or whoever they were trying to meet. Now, that sort of, anger, and in such a public manner is uncalled for, because there must be space, whether it is in, face-to-face government meetings or in a public forum, where a debate can be held for different points of view to coexist. You could differ, but it cannot get dirty. So I think that space and that ability to kind of have a mature debate is still